Okay, we're ready.
We are ready.
Welcome everyone to our first session. Um, a collab. Yesterday, the other day, Pamela and I were talking about collaboration as the key into getting to communities and talking about mental health and so on. I'm called Moses Fulham. I'm a journalist. I'm a teacher by profession. I'm a mental health enthusiast, and I got to meet um, Pamelia Palm online after watching one of her YouTube moments, and since then I haven't looked back. So I'm your host. If you are in Uganda, you would have you would have seen the beautiful country that it is. I've been saying there that it's called the Pearl of Africa. Indeed, it is because of the way it looks like. But I'm your host. Our facilitator today is Pamelia Pan. Pahan is the visionary and founder of the Healing Institute, a worldwide online hub of holistic perspective. This is it. This is her work. Um, and she as well is a teacher and practitioner of energy healing. She has studied and taught this healing modality for over 20 years. Over 20 years. Pamelia is a certified body code and emotion code practitioner, offering emotional healing sessions to release and process negative emotions from the subconscious. As a certified energy practitioner, Pamelia aids her clients to realign beliefs and heal past lifetime energy. So that is her docket. And she's going to facilitate this session. And I'm thinking, even before she comes in, I'm thinking through the words of Douglas MacArthur, who said, life is a lively process of becoming. Life is a lively process of becoming. And even as I hand over to Pamelia, I want us to think through those words. What we are doing right now is life. We are doing life. And it's a lively process of becoming, knowing mental health issues, yes, but also mitigating mental health issues. Pamelia, you are welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Moses. That was a lovely introduction. And I love that quote. Um, Maybe we can put it in the chat so
Yeah.
everybody has it. It is so very true. And, when we were talking about creating this event, um, it was serendipitous that Moses happened to find um, one of the podcasts that I had done with these three men that we have today who are going to do the presentations. And so in June, my podcast theme was men's health. And so we had James and Mark and Brian who came different times during the month to do a presentation on men's health. And so Moses happened to see one of those and reached out to me on LinkedIn, which is an online platform. So this is just really the way the world works right now. I'm on the west coast of Canada. Moses is in Uganda. Uh, Brian is in New York. Mark is in Ireland. James is in Sedona, Arizona, in the United States, and Reverend Dr. Kimmy is in Sacramento, in California, as well as the other practitioners, which I'm going to mention that we have on our platform. So I'm just really very honored and excited that we are doing this event. Um, when Moses reached out to me and we had a conversation about the men in his community and how he wanted to do something to support them, I went, this is not just a Uganda community issue. This is a worldwide issue. So let's not call it even an issue. Let's call it a challenge because I like that word better. And let's do something for this. Let's meet that challenge. So that's how it came about, which was very exciting. The Healing Institute is an online platform. We have a number of holistic practitioners, and that is that's our passion, to serve people in health and wellness and give them people that they can connect with for their best health. This event is called Embracing Your Mental Health. And as I mentioned earlier, and as Moses mentioned, it was created by a collaboration. And we are using this event to support men and their health, but we're also supporting women's health. And so this is our vision, to make this available for other communities, for both men and women. So I want to just do a quick introduction. We have Reverend Dr. Kimberly with us today. She's a luminary Egyptian Reiki master and a spiritual life coach. I'm always delighted to have her. We have some great conversations, and she's amazing. So she is on our platform. We have also Elmarie from South Africa. She's not here today, but she's a holistic life enhancement strategist, and really helps people put their boundaries in place. Marie Piplovic is from Portland, Oregon. She's traveling today, so she's not able to be on right now, but hopefully she'll be watching it later. And she's a conscious breathing facilitator and intuitive coach. Brian Baird, who's one of your presenters, is a hypnotherapist and a transformational coach. And although we don't have Brian yet up on the platform with his lovely portrait face and information, he does a lot of help with us in the background, with the techie stuff, which I always need. And I am, as Moses said, the founder of the Healing Institute and a body code, emotion code practitioner. So we want to get started, and I do really want to invite, I'm going to invite James Kwanui to come and talk to us, spiritual counselor, life strategist, and what he's going to speak about today is, do you know who you are? How to understand your energetic boundaries. So James, welcome. So wonderful to have you here with us today.
Thank you, and I'm grateful to be here. So it's interesting, and I'm going to talk to the people that are also going to be listening to the replay. And so, Moses, I'm going to put you on the spot for just a second. I'm going to ask you a question, and a couple questions. Do you have a native language that you speak, or the native language that you grew up with? And is English your primary language, or was there something else that you spoke growing up?
Can you ask that again, please?
Yeah, I can ask you that question again. So my question would be, is English your first language?
Nope. English is not my first language. English is my second language.
Okay, good.
But
I'm sorry.
The community that I relate with use English all the time, and I'm a teacher for English as a second language. So English is my second language.
Perfect. And the reason that I asked you that question is because in your language, is there a word for life force energy?
So you're asking if he's in Luganda?
In Uganda, yeah.
But Luganda the language, or
In your native tongue?
Are you asking, is there a word for which phrase?
For life force.
A life force. Not offhand, because in the Luganda language has many words to describe many things. So there might be that word, but in a different version. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And the only reason that I said that was because there's something that we all have, and there's something that we all connected to, and what the Hawaiians call mana, which is life force energy. And so when I'm talking about boundaries, and when I'm talking about how we move through the world, is understanding how life force energy moves through us. It's about being able to connect to that life force energy. It's about being able to use that life force energy in order to enhance, in some ways, our lives. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and actually was a practice, instead of talking this morning, I wanted to walk people through a practice because I only have a few minutes. So I thought that that would be the most powerful thing that we could do. And so what I want everybody to do for just for a few minutes is to just close your eyes and to take a nice deep breath. And as you're taking that breath, with every breath that you breathe in, what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to breathe in that there's that life force energy, this amazing energy that's all around us, and to breathe that in and just become a little bit more aware of understanding that breath is not just the air that we breathe, but the energy that we pull into our bodies as well. And so as you take that breath and you breathe in, as you release, what you're wanting to do is to release any energy that's not in alignment with your body. In other words, if there's tension in your day, if there's stress in your day, if there's a conversation that you had that didn't go very well with someone, you want to give yourself permission to let these pieces go. So taking a breath in, breathing in that fresh energy, breathing out all the pieces inside of your life that you may not want to hold on to, or that are no longer necessary to hold on to. And then as you do that, then is to come into a place where you find a rhythm and a breath that feels good to you. Doesn't have to be big or small. It doesn't have to be long or deep. Just something that feels comfortable, and be able to lock into that rhythm. Notice how your breath moves in and out of your body. In other words, become very aware and very physical of it. Notice as you breathe in how the air moves through your nostrils, how it hits the back of your throat, how your lungs expand and contract. As you exhale, it's the same thing. You're allowing that energy to move out through you. You feel your lungs contract. You feel the air move out of you. And then the same thing again. One of the things that's so automatic in our lives, and one of the things that we don't pay attention to, is this movement of energy, this movement of breath. As you do that, then we start to recognize other things that are happening in our body. We might recognize that, see or feel tension in our shoulders. Sometimes I notice that my jaw is very tight. And we do all of these things without judgment, because judgment is one of those pieces that we carry around us all the time. There's things that we do, and then we judge ourselves for the things that we do. And so this is also this practice of watching how quickly and how often we have a tendency to judge ourselves, even if it's just focusing on our breath. So as you focus on your breath, notice the feeling and the changes that might be happening inside of you. Notice where your breath lands, because where your breath lands in your body is an indication of what you're feeling or what you may be feeling. This is an opportunity to give our bodies permission to relax. You want to be able to relax so that I can actually bring more clarity, more understanding into my life. And without that space to do that, without being able to clear things out of my way so that I can bring that that clarity into my life, it makes it more challenging. And I like the word that Permelia used, and it was the challenge. And then I said, well, let's redefine that in a little bit different way, because what we're doing is we're identifying an opportunity for change. And so that's what we're doing here, right? We're identifying an opportunity for change. So when you talk about mental health, and it's not just for men, it's for all of us, right? It's watching where our mind is and watching, really becoming more aware of the things that we're thinking about as we go through our day. Noticing if what we're thinking is really, and I'm going to use very basic concepts, right? Positive or negative. And if it's something that is negative, that or is not allowing me to be in a better space inside of myself, can I give myself permission to change that? We don't often stop long enough to create that space for that, because the mental, and I'm going to use mental machinations. In other words, the constant mental process that we have doesn't allow a lot of times for that to happen. And so for me, I know several times through the day, sometimes every few minutes, when I notice myself getting stressed, when I notice this place where my mind seems to be taking control, this is the way that I see it, is to be able to stop in that moment and take a breath. And in that stopping and taking a breath, what I'm doing is I'm interrupting that train of thought. And by interrupting that train of thought, it gives me opportunity to make shifts and changes. It gives me opportunity to recognize the negativity that I might be saying to myself, because most of what we go through is internal. We're thinking about these things. And so it's through that internal process and recognizing where my thoughts are, how I'm feeling, that change can happen. So it's an easy process. It's an easy process to stop and take a breath. And yet to be able to give that to ourselves, to give our permission to ourselves to do that, and also the opportunity to do it as much as we need to as we go through the day, to be able to shift the energy, to be able to come back into a sense of presence, to be able to focus on the things that we know that are important. Now, I don't want to keep going on, Permelia, so you have to tell me how long I have.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes,
Perfect.
breathing is so important. We do it every day. We do it unconsciously, but it's so important, especially to take those deep, energetic breaths that get the oxygen into our bodies. Yeah. Thank you for that. That was a beautiful
Not just
practice.
the oxygen, but remember, life force energy. So we're
Life
talking about
force
one.
energy.
That's the shift, is the understanding that what we are doing is we're building life force energy in our body every time we become conscious of our breathing.
Which is so important, and all part of the vibrational energy that we all have, and that we can send out to the world, the positive vibrational energy that the world needs,
I was wondering,
as do we.
is it appropriate for me to add something? As earlier Moses had mentioned the lively process of being, and I actually think that's life force energy.
Absolutely.
Yes, I like that.
So thank you, Moses, for allowing me to be here, and now I get to sit back and listen to everybody else.
Well, thank you so much, James. That was wonderful. So yes, our next presenter is Mark Carolyn with Mark Carolyn Coaching. Mark is a transformational life leadership and executive coach, corporate well-being coach. Oh, the list goes on. Consultant and NLP practitioner. And Mark has done a TED Talk, so you need to check out his LinkedIn, because I think it's on LinkedIn. I think you've got it posted on LinkedIn somewhere in your profile. It's very good. It's a really good TED Talk. I'm so delighted that you were able to do that, Mark, and I had the opportunity to listen to it. So Mark's mission as a coach is to help clients come back home to themselves. And I love that phrase. By raising their awareness and implementing the necessary changes to take back control of their lives. And he knows and helps people through positive change so life becomes for the living and not just for the working, which he's going to tell you was one of his challenges that he's had. So I have you down as talking about work-life balance, Mark. Whatever you would like to speak on today would be perfect. So welcome.
Perfect. Thank you, Pamelia. And like James, I will keep talking and talking and talking too. So I will set a timer to make sure that I don't really try and talk too far over 10 minutes, because I think that's a smart thing to do. Thank you for the lovely introduction. And to follow on from James, because I know what I get to speak about here today is a very practical thing, the idea and concept of work-life balance, right? But what I work with people is that idea of coming home to yourself. And like James was trying to get us to reconnect with ourselves. And I think that's the key for an awful lot of the challenges that we face, is because we are out of connection and out of alignment with who we are. And what we don't realize a lot of the time is the impact that even has from a work-life balance perspective. Now, if we look at the world that we live in today, we pride being busy. You know, we're rewarded for being busy. It's this idea that I am crazy busy, or I am unbelievably busy. You know, we create adjectives to go before the term busy to stress how actually busy we are. I think I described myself as insanely busy once during my corporate life. What does that even mean? What does that say? But I think a lot of that is because with the busyness, what we tend to be doing is we tend to be saying how, you know, therefore we are great, or therefore we're important. You know, like we wear busy as a badge of honor. But what busy is a lot of the time is an excuse, because it's amazing how we use it to avoid things that we need to deal with. Like in relationships, looking after our kids is a great example. You know, our kids are looking for some help with their homework, or they have to be put to bed, but we are too busy. Oh, therefore that's fine. And even from a social perspective, we might have social responsibilities, social events we're supposed to go to, but oh, I'm busy with work, therefore I don't have to do that. So it's very interesting how that busy takes over in so many ways, and we allow it to, because from a cultural space, from a societal space, being busy is very acceptable. I remember very well, like when I started my own business about 4 years ago, and my mother would ask me, how are you getting on? I said, oh God, I'm very busy. She said, well, isn't that great? Well, no, I'd rather be earning money than be very busy. You know, that's exactly again the pride of being busy. But let me break that down a little bit further, right? Why are we busy? Are we busy because we have too much work to do? Are we busy because we're not good at what we do? Are we busy because we don't handle our work very well? A lot of these can be the case. But I would argue that a lot of the reason why we find ourselves to be so busy is actually because of how we identify. Now, what do I mean by how do we identify? Now, I'll use myself as a prime example for this. So when I was back in the corporate world, I would have identified myself as always being available. That was me. I was always available. I was always there to give a hand. I was always there to solve problems. I was always available. And I worked a lot of hours. So I would come home from work in the evening, I would leave work at maybe 5 or 6 o'clock, come home and then have my dinner, and then I'd log back on and be working for the next few hours every evening. This was probably 5 evenings a week, maybe a bit at the weekend. And there was a very logical reason in my brain. I thought I had to do it. I thought I was important. I thought it was necessary. But what I was really doing was I was matching the identity I had for myself, because I identified as always being available. And a lot of my clients would have been US based. And so when they sent an email at what was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, their time, could have been 8, 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the evening, my time, my identity of always being available meant I needed to answer that. I needed to prove that I was available. I needed to answer my identity. And therefore, I will always answer those emails. I will always be there doing it. And what was I sacrificing because of that? Like that goes further. Like that was one of mine, right? The idea that we always have to be seen in the workplace. There's another reason why we fall into these spaces. The idea that we have to do more work than everyone else. The idea that if we don't outwork other people, then we won't succeed. It's an identity. I am always the busiest, therefore I have to be the busiest. So because we latched onto those identities, then we hold very tight to those identities, and therefore our actions are driven from those identities. And that's a really, really dangerous space to get into. Because we think the reason why we're busy is because we have a lot to do. But the reason why we're busy is because of how we identify what we need to do. And even to touch on what James was saying earlier about that connection with yourself. Like, I find it very interesting how I will work with a lot of people on a one-to-one basis. A lot of men at all different levels of where they work. And one of the reasons why they're talking to me is because they feel a little bit lost in life. They're not sure where they're going. They're not sure what's really going on. And they'll tell me that they prioritize their family, for instance. My family comes first, always comes first. Yet then they'll tell me how they work every single evening and don't see their family. Now, I understand for some people, there can be a need or a desire to work to earn enough money to support the family. Okay, that's fine, right? But if it's not an absolute necessity, then you're not prioritizing your family. So what are you really identifying as? Your actually identity is that I am a worker. That's my number one identity. And that is the danger that we fall into when we think about this work-life balance piece. So let's bring it to the more practical as well, okay? If we're going to deal with the work-life balance piece, and if we're willing to be honest about how we identify, because only through being honest can we actually begin to handle that a little bit. And back to what James was saying there too, because I like to bring forward what he was bringing through about taking a breath, about taking it easy. When we spend our time in that space of always being busy and always being frantic, we're rushed, we're distracted easily, we're driven by stress all the time, we're trying to achieve so many things at once, we're saying yes to every new task, never enough time to get things done. We have no boundaries here. We're a multitasker, that's all we do. Because we're absolutely in reaction mode all the time. So all we ever do is react. And that reaction drives stress, drives emotional pressure, it drives all that. We're not in the space of response. Responding and response and doing what we need to do the right way in each situation in order to actually cope with what's in front of us. How do we get into that space? First of all, we need to become conscious of what we're doing. Why are we doing the thing? Sometimes that can be just taking that breath and reconnecting with ourselves and actually understanding, well, what is my purpose here? What am I supposed to do? Because when we can begin to do that, we begin to move from the concept of being busy into the concept of being productive. So instead of the frantic energy, the rushed, we're focused. We're able to brush off the distractions. So we're not driven by the stress of things, we're driven by a mission. Because my mission is to do what am I here to achieve? Excuse me. Like this idea of saying yes to every new task, never having enough time, all these kind of pieces, because we don't have boundaries. And one of the reasons why we don't have boundaries is because we have to be of service to everyone else. And where within those boundaries are we prioritizing ourselves? And that's a massive, massive part of managing our work-life balance. Now, if I had loads of time, I would probably take a look at a couple of tools we could use to do this, particularly around the time matrix of the Eisenhower box, which is a really helpful and useful and practical tool for beginning to manage all the stuff that we have in front of us from a personal or a professional perspective. But really what that tool does, and maybe this is the most important thing, is it teaches us how to prioritize. Because we can only ever have one priority at any single time. We can't have 10 different priorities. We can have competing priorities, yes, but only one priority is the main priority. So what are we making the main priority? And to bring that back into the personal again, like I said, I will work with a lot of men and they'll tell me about their challenges around their work-life balance and, their life is not where they want it to be, their relationships aren't good, their health isn't good, their exercises aren't good. And I'll ask them for a list of priorities and they'll tell me that maybe they coach a football team, they'll have their kids, they'll have their wife, they'll have their partner, they'll have work, they'll have all these things, they'll have their parents, they'll have all these things as priorities. And I'll go, okay, well, where are you? I'll say, oh, I'm not on the list. Okay, well then, if you're not on the list of priorities, then how can you expect to be able to manage all that's going on in your world? How can you expect to do the things that keep you going? Where is the opportunity to recharge yourself and recharge your energy? A huge thing that I find, especially with men, is we don't do the things we love to do. We don't do the things that light us up. Like loads of men will say to me, oh, I love to go hiking, or I love to get out and meet my pals. Simple things like that. And say, oh, great, that's fantastic. And they'll light up and they tell me, okay, when was the last time you did that? Oh, I don't remember. But if you are not doing the thing that gives you your energy, then all you're doing is draining your energy. So you have to fit those things into your life. Those are some of the things that need to become a priority in order to be able to do the things you say you want to do. Because that's the really key things for how we begin to actually take back control of our life and feel like we're in control and it's our life. And I know that might seem like a lot. And the starting point, if you want to take a practical exercise out of this, is to actually sit and write down, right, on a daily basis, what are my priorities? So what is the most important thing that I need to do today? What's the thing that will move me forward, move my life forward, move everything forward? Because that's the thing that we need to focus on. And we can say, and lots of us have, that I have no time, right? I catch myself saying it all the time too. And it may be true. There may be so much going on that we have no time. But we always have time. It's just that we're using the time to do something else. So when we say we have no time, it's that, no, I'm not prioritizing these other things. And if the things you don't have time for, if they're not a priority, well, then you don't need to have time for them. But if they are a priority, it's not that you have to make time, because time is constant. There's only so much of it. You have to shift the time you're using for something else into what you want to do. I'm conscious that I'm right on 10 minutes, Pamelia, so I'll finish by just saying you never actually find the time for anything. If you want the time for anything, you have to use the time you have.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. That's so powerful, because we make those excuses about, well, we don't have the time for this and we don't have the time for that. And when we do put our priorities in place, like you mentioned, guess what? We are more productive. We
Yeah.
actually get more done.
It's simple, but we've spent so long in life not having priorities, not having boundaries.
Yeah.
So for a lot of us, it's a real sea change in how to think and how to act in those ways until we begin to actually build that life that we want out of it.
Absolutely. Yes. James, I think you have a question.
Not a question, but just I really want to just say to Mark, you made me think of something, and that was this is how it came up, because you were talking about frantic, and so there's this place I said, so be more focused and less frantic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm taking that away. So thank you.
Thanks, James.
All right. Our next presenter is Brian Baird. Brian's lives in New York City. And I met Brian, oh, I can't remember now when, but a while back, 3 years ago. And he is an amazing mentor. I'll have to say, he's mentored me. He's helped us with the Healing Institute in marketing ways. And so he likes to define himself as a hypnotherapist, a leader, a guide, a corporate and business coach. He's a speaker and an author, a media host, social justice and environmental advocate, a wellness advocate, but his very favorite role is father. So I love that. And Brian's going to talk today about his program. Well, he's not going to tell us all about the program, but his program is called The Effective Way, Be You to Be Free. Now, just think about that. You're being you to be free. We don't often think that, and this is just what, building on what Mark just mentioned, is when we're thinking that we need to be busy, busy, busy. We need to be we need to be everything for everybody. And we're not giving ourselves time and priority. So welcome, Brian. We're
Hello.
so delighted to have you here today.
So, first of all, I've been inspired by the things Moses, James, and Mark have talked about today, because they're, in many ways, we all serve in the same capacity. We just have slightly different vectors of view on how we do it and what we're doing. But it's any one of us could step into the other person's work, I'm sure, and still, adequately serve the audience, if not superiorly serve the audiences in question. So what I wanted to do today was just tell you a little bit. My theme is always about service to humanity, and I found that in my own model that has made me incredibly rich and abundant at various levels of my life that go way beyond just calculating what's in the bank account. And I have become infected with this energy. And I use the word infected in a nice way, to basically show up in a service model, almost all the time. I have so much to say that 10 minutes wouldn't be enough, but I thought we could have a little story about how I got to this point and maybe a little bit something fun we could all do that kind of lines up with everything we're doing. And the first thing is to say I'm almost 54 years an entrepreneur. I have been in the corporate world. I've had my own businesses. I've made, and I'll use the word spent, millions. Money is not the hugest motivator for me these days, but there was a time when that's what I lived for. And as a result, I spent my time really studying the human condition, the human behavior process, because in order for me to have sales and other related factors in my business and businesses, or teaching people how to sell, I was teaching them how to read through the human condition and figure out how you could, quote, manipulate that to get your sale. So it's almost like everything that I can do today is for good, but there was a time when I did stuff, and many of it was amateurish level learning, but I did learn enough about the human condition that I was able to be more manipulative and maybe on the dark side of what could be understanding the human condition. But I myself was not happy. And it was in the pursuit of happiness that I made some major, had some real major realizations and made some major adjustments in my journey. And then also had some massive discoveries as well. So I would argue that the major reason for my unhappiness was because, one, I grew up in an environment where I learned to become a survivor very early. And when you're in survivor mentality or survivor framing or survivor posture, whatever language you'd like to put on that, it's a highly reactive and often very unaware, unself-reflective way to live. You spend much of your journey just figuring out how to conquer the next hill, how to get the next dollar, how to make sure you look good, how, just some of it's really very performative when you get right down to it. Even acts of giving were performative because it was all about adulation and validation and a lot of other things that happens when you're that fragile. Your entire existence is externally managed. It's not an internal compass that you're working on. So what ended up happening for me, and this could take hours to talk about, so I'll just say in sort of short order, my daughter, who's now 23, almost 24, my then wife and I adopted her from China, and I never wanted kids. And and I'll just say the primary reason for not wanting kids is because my own life was so wonky, and I saw parenting as a cyclical behavior. So I didn't want to inflict on some other set of kids that which was done to me. So I just said, the only thing I could think of was I'll break the cycle. I wasn't going to get better. I was just going to break the cycle. So so I dated women and finally I met a woman who wanted kids. But the women I dated prior to that didn't want kids, so it was all copacetic. But then finally I met a woman who I really adored, and she wanted kids with a big S on the end. And I had to make a decision about, okay, so I thought, I made a ridiculous negotiation with myself. I'll just make the money and I'll orbit around and she'll take care of the kids. And I never discussed this with anybody. It's just the rule I made for myself. So in another few years later, we weren't biologically producing, so we decided to adopt, and we went to China to collect this beautiful little girl. And as soon as she was in my arms, the whole world changed. And I can just say it wasn't an overnight thing that I grew up, but I have to tell you, I grew up with my daughter. I grew into myself, and I grew into a person who was much more empathetic and much more capable of love and kindness and compassion. And it no longer it's not personal, it's business. Everything is personal. And and so my own journey was involving all of these growth periods and developing new forms of discovery and expression. And inside of that, I discovered hypnosis for myself, and I liked it so much that I got myself planted with. I studied for several years with somebody who has a PhD in hypnotherapy to make sure that, and I have other modalities that are within my reach, but it was all about learning how to use, and I had been an amateur study of NLP or neuro-linguistic programming before, because that's how I was using the dark side of sales, right? So now I have my mastery in NLP, and I've got my hypnotherapy, and all these other things that were in place. And all of a sudden, as I'm growing, I'm starting to realize that my happiness is hinged to being much more authentic than I've ever been. But it took a long time to realize that I wasn't even being authentic. And so I've come to the conclusion, after doing all this work for now many years, it's over a decade of doing what I'm doing, and I had this very accelerated growth path during my daughter's early years and so on, that more than half of, at least half, if not rough, a little bit more than half of the world will be in that survival mentality I just described that I was in for their entire lives. They will live, they will be born, live, and die in this reactive, unaware, or mostly unaware approach to life. Everything is a drama, everything is battle, everything is win, 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 or I'm a loser, or I am not worth anything, whatever other language happens when people are in survival framing. And I want to change as many of those lives as possible. So I've made it my mission to bring awareness to people's lives, because once you have an experience, you can't unexperience. Once you see, you can't unsee, right? And then people like James and Mark could take over the long range work, because all I want to do is wake people up. So I could keep on going about this whole thing, but I just wanted to ask everybody, please, if you would, everybody who's on camera, and if you're not on camera, maybe be willing to go on camera. And if you're not willing to go on camera, at least still do this. Please take your hands and put them by your head like this. So what you really can do is, unless you turn your head, you can't see your hands. Just make sure that's the case, okay? Now, I would like you to look at your right hand. Just take a look at your right hand and think of that about all the things you don't want, all the things you're afraid of, all the things that are non-positive in your journey. Now, it could be self-worth, paying the bills, not enough money, or a host of other possibilities are in your right hand here. Now take a look at your left hand. Think about all the things you want, you deserve: love, sex, intimacy, peace, beauty, all those other things in your life. And maybe if you want, you can add the 200-foot yacht, whatever it is you think you want on the left-hand side. But the idea here is that we spend so much time in the right-hand model in our lives. That's the survival frame. We're worried about all these bills and drama and relationships and all these other things. And when we're looking at our right hand, go back to your right hand. When you're looking at your right hand, can you see your left hand? So the truth of the matter is, all of us as practitioners are trying to get people from survival mode to thriving mode, because they don't know they're not in thriving mode, because all they can see is the survival stuff in their right hand. They're busy just getting through the day. So my job is to wake people up enough that this is something they can see that they want, so that they can move through life with extraordinarily different experiences than they would if they stayed in that reactive, unaware survival frame. So be you to be free is really about discovering who you are deep down inside, the story of who you are really, and releasing all those stories that were given to you. Why was I in survival frame? I had a narcissistic, sociopathic, malignant narcissistic parent. I had another parent who I didn't know until decades later was a narcissist at what we call the covert conversational level. And it's a very overused word, narcissism. So I just want to reframe that as fragile egos that need to soothe themselves through the others. Narcissists, their entire existence is making other people make them feel good. In the end, that's what they're ultimately doing. They can't feel good if you don't see them the way they want to be seen. So my job is to wake up the fragile egos. My job is to get them so that they can see that they have that they first of all recognize they're truly unhappy. It took me decades to get there. And so I don't want them to have to wait as long as me either. But there's just the idea is, if you can recognize that you're unhappy because you're stuck in right-hand behavior, that survival frame, let's get you to the thriving frame. And inside of that experience, is true joy, true love, unconditional type, true intimacy, the kind that's fed by true love, true peace, all these other things that are available to you when you finally get a chance to be the real you and start to thrive. That's what Be You to Be Free is all about. And if anybody here who's heard me just talking knows it completely lines up with everything you're just doing too. I'm not here to compete with anybody. I'm here to say, let's work together to make the world better. And what I just described is a mental health journey, which also is a spiritual journey. It is, as Moses had pointed out before, it is a lively process of being.
Thank you, Brian. That was just beautiful, really, bringing it all together. So very grateful for your insights, and thank you for sharing your story. Very important to realize where we've been in our story and in our journey, and give ourselves a pat on the back that we have come a long way. All the learning that we've done. So I'm just going to make sure Moses comes back. Actually, everybody that's has turned their camera off. You can please turn your camera on, come into the main room, and let us see your lovely faces. There's Moses. And I just want to thank all of our presenters, James and Mark and Brian. That was a beautiful sharing. And we really would like to thank all of you who have attended today, and those ones that are going to be watching the replay and watching the recording later. And certainly, I'm just going to ask Moses if he has any final words he'd like to say, and anyone who is in the back room, please come forward.
That was fantastic. Be you to be free, Brian. I like that. And thanks so much, Pamelia. I want to end on a once upon a time story. This story is about two monks. Probably you've read the story, probably you know the story. And the story goes that two monks wanted to cross a brook, a river, whatever you call it. And just by the brook, there was a little girl. Some books say little girl, some books say big girl, but it was a girl anyway. And she wanted to cross the brook as well. And she couldn't. There were two monks. Monk one looks at monk two and says, what should we do? Because according to the culture of monks, they don't touch the other gender. You know, monks are sworn to celibacy. One, two, it's a spiritual thing not to touch the other gender. But monk one decided, well, get on my back, girl. Let me cross the brook with you. And he did exactly that. He took her over the brook and let go of her. Now, as they walked on, Monk 2 looks at Monk 1 with a dirty look. Now, if a man looks at another man with a dirty look, that must be a real dirty look. And Monk 1 says, oh, so you are judging me because of what I did there. I carried the girl over. I carried the girl. Okay.
You might have to mute Jack.
Yeah,
There we
I
go.
did. He's muted
Okay,
himself. Okay.
I carried the girl over, and that was that. But look at you. You've been carrying her in your mind, in your heart, all the way. And sometimes mental health issues are like that. Our first speaker talked about energy and judgment. Mark talked about how busy you are. Brian was talking about service to humanity. And if you can fuse all these issues they're at the heart level. How are you carrying them? How are you medicating with what is around you? So it's up to us. We can only mitigate with what we have. We can play the monk one, we can play the monk two, but ultimately we are looking at healing, healing, and that's why Pamela has the Healing Institute and all that to help us to journey. It's a journey. Life is a journey. To journey all this negative energy to focus and bring our lives into in sync with what life should be. Thank you so much, Pamela. I think it's your turn to let us know how we can get to the Healing Institute.
Yes, absolutely. So certainly the QR code that I always go the wrong way, that I have on the background, you can connect with us there. You'll find that we have calendar links that you can connect with all of the practitioners, and we all have complimentary sessions, an information session, 30 minutes, so you can call us and connect with us and set up a time to have a chat. And it's just been delightful to be working with you, Moses. Reverend Dr. Kimmy, we want to say thank you to you especially because she did a lot of the graphics that we used on our social posts and the handouts I know that Moses was giving around his community. So thank you for everyone who forwarded all of that information to your own groups and communities. We greatly appreciate that. And so if there's any questions that people have, we got another person popping in here. If anybody has any questions, you can pop those in the chat or you can come on off your camera and just ask. We'll stay on for a few more minutes. Oh, here's
I
Gilbert.
have a question for Brian.
Great.
Yeah, I think Brian said we spend so much time in the survival mode that we don't get to thrive. We spend so much time in the survival mode that we don't get to thrive. Brian, why do you think this is so, especially for the men?
Well, men's challenges can often be induced at a very young age culturally. We're told we have to be tough, we can't cry, we have to be maybe a warrior, or a producer, or a provider. We have to be a man, which means we're tough. And and if we show up with sensitivities, or maybe somebody happens to be, have a different gender bias or whatever the case may be, we start to push them out of the society, and that's a very scary thing for a lot of people. So they will do what they have to do to comply. So they'll stick inside of this societal norm, which in most cases does not allow us to be the real us. When we're supporting what society is expecting from us, most of the time we're living to their stories, not our own. So as a consequence, we are by default in survival mode as soon as we don't allow ourselves to be ourselves. We are performing as somebody else. We're living other people's stories and expectations. We may even have traumas and other things that are carrying along with us that we don't even get a chance to nurse or heal because we've got to be tough. We got to be providers. We got to be winners or warriors or whatever the case may be. And it's, the challenge for all of us as human beings, it doesn't matter whether we're men or women or some other variation of the human condition, that the challenge for all of us is to learn to release the stories that were given to us by others, parents, teachers, past lives, generational memory, genetic memory, peers, whatever the case may be, because so much of the time we're spending our time living for other people's needs and stories and just do not take care of ourselves. And so the more we get a chance to do that, the more we get a chance to release those stories, And most of the time, we don't even know we're doing this. That's the whole point, Moses, is we don't really realize we're in survival frame. We think we're doing the right thing because we're providing for families, or we're, going to war, or we're, being a tough guy, or whatever the case may be, winning in business, whatever it is. We think we're doing the right thing. And as Mark pointed out earlier, is that there's a way to be an authentic leader, and there's a way to be a leader that performs. And the leader who learns to be authentic has their best chance at being a thriving person, as opposed to somebody who's a survivor. And then James made his own discussion about mana. The idea is that when we have this life force that we serve, which is where we get to be the real version of us, we are going to be the most rewarded for that. Whereas if we're stuck in survival frame and we're not paying attention to our real needs and the real needs of people around us, and we're not even particularly able to be reflective about it, or aware of it, then we're in survival mode. And by default, when you're in survival mode, you are not in a place to discover yourself.
Thank you so much, Brian. I have a question for Mark. I have a question for Mark. Mark, are you there?
I
Are
am.
you
I
there?
am. I'm having to plug in my laptop because it's about to die. But go on ahead.
Uh-oh. Mark, how busy, because you talked about busy and in a place of and somebody being in a place of inactivity with the label busy. How busy is negative towards mental health? How the label busy, how is it negative? How does it affect mental health?
I think Moses, right? It's very hard to define busyness in time, because if you are busy doing what aligns with who you are, what aligns with your soul, well then that doesn't drain on you in the same way. If you're busy doing all the time and doing things that aren't what you need, that aren't good for you, that has a hugely different impact. There's a lovely story told by an Irish philosopher called John Moriarty, and he talked about being in having to get across this huge, big, long forest. And he'd hired a couple of, these guys were adventurers. They'd hired a couple of local guys to help them across, and they were rushing through. They had to get to the far side of the island to get a boat, and they had 3 days. They had 4 days to get there. After 2.5 days, they were nearly there, and suddenly the guys all stopped. And he was like, okay, the adventurer's like, why have we stopped? Why have we stopped? The guy's like, we need a rest. And he was like, okay, well, if a day and a half, that's okay. Take a rest. Take a couple of minutes. An hour later, no movement. Half a day later, still no movement. Your man was getting a bit frantic. Like, what's going on? What's going on? A whole day later, they only half a day to go before the boat was going. He's like, what's going on? What's going on? And the leader of the guys who were helping him said, we had to stop. We have to let our souls catch up. And I think that's a lovely way of looking at it, because if the stuff that we're doing is just the busy, if we're just human doings all the time, then we're in a bad way. If we're human beings, and if in that being is being the person we're supposed to be, if it's in servitude to what we really need and what works in life and what's good for us, well, then I don't think time has the same impact. Does that make sense, Moses?
Oh yeah, you did well. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mark.
You're welcome.
I
Thank
have
you.
one question for James, please. We're talking about energy, negative energy, and judgment. Is that? James, are you there?
Yes, I am. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Energy and judgment. And I want to place it. I want to stay at the man's in terms of gender. I want to stay with the man. Energy and judgment. Negative energy calls for negative judgment. Positive energy calls for positive judgment. And I'm thinking, most men, we struggle to balance out, because again, like Brian says, and then we don't live for me. I don't live for me. I live for you, and not particularly you, but for the other. So we struggle to balance in terms of energy, negative and positive energy, and we can wear out because very few men take out the rubric and tick off the points that they've done well. How can a man navigate this? How can a man, even if they won't balance it, but how can they try to balance this?
Wow, that's a really good question, and when you think about that, it's first of all, before we do anything, we have to realize that that's happening. And so that, inside of that is that practice of presence. When I work with people, one of the things that I do is to give them not the concept of what all of that is, but the feeling of what that is, right? Because once I have the feeling of that, then it's always there and will never go away, right? So if you take a moment, Moses, and you think about something that was some good moment, happy moment in your life, something that was really beautiful and amazing that you were proud of, right? Don't tell us what that was. I just want you to take a second, and I actually just want you to feel what that feels like in your body. And it's an interesting thing. So tell me if I'm wrong or not, but inside of that space, there's this warmth that comes here and an energy that almost feels like it expands out of you, right? So now think about the last argument you had with someone or something that did not go your way. Yeah, exactly. See, I see you laughing, right? So now notice how quickly you went like this. So you feel the contraction, right? And so when we're talking about the negative and the positive, if we can just, I make it so that it's really easy because I had to make it easy for myself, right? And so this place where when something happens or as we're moving through our day, I'm not only aware of what's happening out there inside of where I'm at, I'm actually aware of how I'm feeling about what that is. So when you talk about negative and positive, I use that as the gauge for how to navigate that negativity and that positivity. And then there's this really easy choice because I look at that and go, wow, do I want to feel that expanded energy where it felt really, really good? Or do I want to actually feel that energy where I feel like I shut myself down? Right? And the shutting down then becomes the place where the those negative words and the negative thinking comes in, right? And so taking that, just that really simple process and then incorporating that into my life will at least help me start to shift it in a more positive way. Is that helpful, Moses?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, James. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Brian wants to say something. Yeah.
I just wanted to expand on what you just said is because talk about when you get a chance to start feel what's going on, it gives you that's information that gives you the opportunity to figure out what your next expression or experiences or whatever the things are going to be. So one of the things that Moses had asked earlier about was like why when we're in a survival frame, we can't necessarily be thriving. And that's because when we're in survival frame, we often don't know what we're really feeling because we either shut down, as you described, or we're walled up in such a way that because we've been taught socially that feelings are not good for mostly for men. But we also tell women not to show their feelings in other ways. There's just all kinds of things we do to avoid having to deal with this. So we train ourselves from the youngest of years to just stop feeling or stop showing our feelings. And then at some point we stop even realizing we're having them. So I think your point is beautiful. Now the question is how we get people to start seeing what's happening inside them and registering what it is. So it's something they can move either away from or move towards, that makes it so they have a healthier mind and emotional set. So thanks for sharing what you shared. It was beautiful.
We can talk about this all day, and I know that Brian and I
Oh,
had this conversation. But the thing about it is that survival mode that is actually a genetic function because it is behavior, and it's behavior that we learned millions of years ago, and that piece, especially inside of men, we all have our different frame of mind for that. I call it the gladiator mentality because my job was to protect and provide, which means that if I show feelings, so think about a warrior in battle, right? When a warrior is in battle, another warrior is looking at that other warrior, and what are we looking for? We're looking for weaknesses. We are looking for places to exploit, right? And
Yeah.
so a long time ago, the psyche of the male was shifted into this way where I have to hide those feelings because that might mean I die. And that might mean my family dies. That mean my clan or my tribe dies. And everybody that counts on me to be there will perish. And so that
Mm.
survival mode is so ingrained inside of our genetic makeup, inside of our DNA, that's why for most of us, we're not even aware of it.
Mm, 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 mm.
So it can make it. I mean, this is an opportunity to recognize that and go, okay, as I change this, I am not changing my outlook. I am actually changing the way I live and the way I am.
Mm, mm, mm. James, that's deep because you tagged what Brian said, survival mode,
Mhm.
vis-a-vis my personality, vis-a-vis the things that I face on a daily, and oh man, it's deep. It's that enchilada because it's all worked out in so many things. And have we been
It's
told? We have.
all intertwined.
Exactly. We've been told, okay, provide, don't show feelings, like you said, acts of vulnerability and negative. And then you have the me trying to survive, trying to be that. And then that takes toll of my mental health, and what comes of me might be a product of what has been going on behind the curtains. Thank you so much, James. Thank you, Brian, and thank you
You're welcome.
so much.
That was an excellent question. So thank you for asking me that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Panelia, over to you, please.
All right, well, again, I just invite anyone who is off camera to come on camera. Any questions that you might have for our presenters, we still have a few minutes left. You're welcome to ask those questions or put any kind of question or comment in the chat. We always like to read those. And other than that, I think this is our very first event where we've done this. So I believe it's gone very well. And I'm just very grateful for everyone who's here and has attended. And I'm going to ask either Gilbert or Martin, who are on camera, who've come to, if either of you have any questions, or if you would like to make any comments. You are welcome.
Well, thank you.
Martin,
Thank you.
wonderful.
Yeah, thank you, Pamelia. And thank you, James and Brian. Well, for bringing out the shift that mankind, it is embedded in mankind to protect your feelings and to have a shield that, because yes, as you put it, there was a time when your family depended on that God. What I want to ask is that yes, times have changed, and the requirements of man in society have changed. So now how do we move forward, given the current society situation? Aren't we exposing ourselves? Aren't we at risk of being vulnerable by coming, uh, you know, by exposing? Yes, I can be myself, but how do we address the current society? Is there a new definition of the current society, and how man in present society should handle his outlook, his reaction to the environment? Yeah.
Thank you, Martin. That's a great question. I think Brian wants to chime in on this one, and then James.
Yep. Yep. I think what we're doing right now, right here, is one of the things we can do. It's about elevation through awareness, and having places where people can go to get, to do. I don't really like to use the word work. I like to look at everything as the healthier way to look at life is through play, because work for many of us, just as a side note, has connotations of burden or drudgery or whatever the case may be. So we have the opportunity to do all the inner play by being in communities like this and working with practitioners who have a history of guiding people into that place of discovery where they get to be kind of a spiritual warrior. Maybe it's or a spiritual gladiator, as opposed to being a human gladiator, because when we're a spiritual gladiator, it has a whole different connotation. It has everything to do with being real and standing and having the power to be vulnerable instead of a power of force type situation. The ability to recognize what true love is, the ability to know the difference between truth and non-truth, to understand how to trust. Because if I can't be like, for example, I've only met Moses in this very meeting, and I've only met James, and I already know Mark, so I've had previous work with him. I don't know if Mark left or not, but there are people that you can trust. And when you have that in your equation, that means you can be real when you have people you trust, as opposed to trying to be that human gladiator that has to protect everything. So these kinds of forums, like we're doing right now, where we all get a chance to express and share and be raw and present and truthful, this all becomes part of that healing that men and women go through. I'll have one more thing I'll say before I shut up. I went this is not something that everybody can identify with, but I do a lot of plant medicine journey work. And one of the most beautiful discoveries I ever had was that the women of the world need to heal, but until we allow them to heal, men are going to have a very difficult time healing, because the women of the world tend to be the people who are frontlining relationships with children and all these other things. But the more we get a chance to heal, the more we recognize the power of who we are to help women heal. So I really believe that this is a loop or an experience that we can all participate in. By virtue of working on ourselves, we help everybody else around us to heal. And as they heal, it helps us heal too. So it's getting involved in the loop of connection to our healing and the healing of those around us will continue to make it so that we all heal together. We all grow together.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, Mark had to leave. He said he left a message saying that he needed to run, and thank you for a wonderful session, and thank you, Moses, for wonderful questions. So yeah, James, you wanted to chime into this. Perfect.
What's happening, and this is just my opinion, is that as our roles change and get redefined, it will, and I don't want to say force, but it brings us into the space of having the opportunity then to change the way that we relate, right? Where it was the in some ways a male dominant society or male dominant way of thinking, right? What we're actually looking for is where the places where we meet and we're mutual, right?
Mhm.
Where is there are places where there's equality now, where it's not one or the other, it's us together,
Yes.
right? And that's the power of the change. And that power comes, like Brian's talking about, from that vulnerability, right? And for us, for men, it's shifting and understanding that vulnerability is actually a superpower, not
Mhm.
not a pain, not a detriment, right?
Yeah, it's not a weakness.
It's not a
It's actually a
weakness.
strength.
It's a strength. So it's a place where we get to look at this and go, yeah, this is where I am. And somebody going, I totally see you. Let's do something about that and let's work together. Right. And in that way, then we are embarking really on a different, it's a different mode of operation. It's a different way of thinking and living and being, And I think this is not just here. I'm talking about globally.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have this opportunity. So we get to, and the other part of it is we get to look at the other part that's going on and that's continuing to go on and just go, I see what that is. I'm choosing to do this instead. So it's just really what Brian's talking about with the right hand and the left hand is going to the left hand and going, I'm going to give myself permission to look at this instead, right? And so it's that opportunity. And it's funny because we could come together, we could talk about this all day.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm actually going to stop now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, James. So awareness, of course, that is, I think, key and one of the very most important things for us to be aware. And I believe that as we are doing events like we're doing today, we are raising our awareness. So we're perhaps hearing some information that you might have heard it before, but maybe it's landing differently today. Or you may not have heard of a certain way of thinking that now resonates with you. So yeah, I truly believe that awareness is very key, because then we can make some changes, and we can change our outlook, and we can change our thinking, and we can be more inclusive, and have a little bit more grace with someone that we know might be struggling, and see how we can support them.
I say have grace for everyone.
Yes, yes, very true. We do need that. We do need that, yes. So yes, thank you, James, for your comments. Showing up and changing how we move forward is always great, and you're more than welcome. It was wonderful to have all of our presenters here. Someone else is not quite sure who's.
If I had power, I would have turned it off for it. But it's Mulundabigwe.
Time to dive in and
Okay, I wasn't sure where that was coming from. So I think we can wrap up today's session. Moses, if you are okay with that. Gilbert, I know you came off mute there a little while ago. Was there something that you wanted to contribute or you wanted to say?
Thank you so much, Pamela, and the team. So grateful to be part of this meeting, and also to be part of the Healing Institute. I am the founder and the director, Korara Family Care Center.
Kenya.
That has benefited so much. Yeah, in Kenya.
In Kenya, yeah.
Yeah, in Kenya. So we have benefited so much from the Healing Institute. We have had Dr. Reverend Kemi and the lessons, and then we have Marie and Halmari. So there are so many things that we have learned from them. I think it's also important that this topic that you brought today, Pamela, about mental health, It is very rampant here in Kenya, especially the financial aspect. Anything that comes with financial, it stresses men a lot. So if James and Brian can still expound how we can manage, as men, how do we deal with this giant financial, and how we can cope with it. So it's something which is very huge and something to be discussed. So thank you so much, and I would love to still hear more from you guys. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much for attending, Gilbert. I know Jackson was popped on, but he had to leave. He's learning how to use an EEG machine, so that's important with your medical clinic. So we were delighted that you were able to come and represent the Carrera Family Clinic, because we have been working with you for a couple of months. Each one of our practitioners has been mentoring and teaching their area modalities, so that as the Carrera Family Clinic medical staff can learn how to do those things, and then they'll be able to pass those on to their patients. So that's been delightful to be able to be part of that. And we're happy to be part of that in any other community as well. So we can always talk about that. So Moses, I think we will say goodbye. I think this was a great first event, and I think we could easily do this again many times.
Absolutely. We are going to do this again and again and again and again. I think it's Brian who said showing up, and the other word you used is awareness. So the two key things into the campaign that we are on. It's like a little fire. You are lighting a little fire, and before you know what, it will be a big fire. So
Yes.
thank you so much for your time and for the wisdom, for your grace through all this time. 1.5 hours. I'm truly blessed. We can do this again. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm going to add on behalf of what you said before, let's all go out into the world and have a lively process of being.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian. Perfect ending. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you again, everyone who attended, and all of our presenters, of course. Yeah, it was a great event.